Meeting of the Public Services Committee, Monday, June 13th, 2011 to order. The first agenda item would be review and approval of minutes dated May 9th, 2011.
Move approval, Aguilar.
Second, Erpenbach.
All right, we do have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Okay, that passes 4-0. The next item on our agenda will be council procedures and organizations. We'll have Deborah Owen give us a reminder of what we're working on here today.
Hey, Deborah Owen, City Clerk, Chief of Council Operations, and again, this is just a continuing review. There were some changes, in part requested from the city, or suggested by our city attorney's office, to the ordinance, and most of those were incorporated in this, but there also were some additional kind of wordsmithing changes as we reviewed this one more time amongst the staff to make sure we kind of really captured some of the customs that are done now, making sure we're updating this ordinance. And so if you want me just to start from the beginning, I can, and just roll through it rather quickly, or did you have any specific questions on it?
I think just the changes, don't you, Councilor Anderson?
I also.
Because we have gone line by line through this a couple of times, I believe.
Yeah, I read through it again yesterday. I don't have any major
Could you
questions.
just give us an executive summary so that those
Sure.
in attendance and maybe those watching will understand a little bit better what we're working on at this time?
Sure. For the most part, we wanted to really be consistent with the term city council instead of just council, so that was some of the changes that came from last time. In addition, where it says the city clerk's office, we changed that to the city clerk or the city clerk's designee as opposed to just the city clerk's office. Let me see if I can roll through this rather quickly. We changed from minutes to journal of proceedings. That is the term in the charter, is that we keep a journal. As you know, with all of the new technology, we keep a lot of that online. It's not really in a journal format, but it is certainly available at our office in a 3-ring binder, which we would call the journal. So we went ahead and went back to that terminology. Otherwise, I'm just moving through. Presiding officer, we wanted to go back. There are some charter provisions about the presiding officer. So in addition to those changes, we also talked about the mayor or the acting mayor using that same terminology as in charter. So you're going to see us use the term presiding officer less, and then inserting mayor or acting mayor to specify. That would be a council member, the chair of the council, if the mayor is not present or needs to absent himself, and then if the chair of the council wouldn't be available, then it would be the vice chair. The agenda, we've simply put in the deadlines that the office already adheres to now.
If I may, I do
Yes.
have one question on that.
Councilman Brown?
At the end of that section, Deborah, access to information after 1 p.m. on Wednesday prior to the city council meeting, is that already a practice? Is that
Yeah.
available at 1 on Wednesday?
We do, as long as we get everything by 10 a.m. in terms of all of the attachments, all of the if there's contract approval or if there is an ordinance. So if we have everything at that 10 o'clock deadline, we get everything out actually by 1 on Wednesday. I put after 1 just to give us a little bit of leeway in case we don't get the information ahead of time. But yeah, we do try to get those agendas up by about 1 o'clock on Wednesday, if at all possible, in part because we have our briefing on Thursday morning where everybody in this city, in terms of employees and officials, needs to have the information for discussions then.
Thank you.
Councilor Anderson.
Councilwoman Erpenbach?
So is this in writing anywhere now, or is it just our practice to do it this way?
There is an executive order out there. So funny you would bring that question up.
Isn't that interesting?
Which I think will probably just simply change to a resolution because it is the clerk's office that administers that. But we do have that 10 o'clock deadline. And again, if we have, we could always, and I'm not sure I'd even open the door here, but a lot of councils will do all of these rules of their procedure in resolution format. The council, since 95 on, has put a lot of these procedures in ordinance, and so we're just trying to update those provisions to reflect the things that we do now.
Good, thank you.
Any questions on page 6? And I'll just keep rolling. No? Okay. No. Under the rules of debate, again, we wanted to make sure, I think this was requested by the committee specifically, that whoever is the presiding officer, whether it's the mayor or the mayor, that they would not use that presiding officer's seat to be able to enter into debate, and so that's just some clarifying that the mayor or acting mayor shall not show themselves to be partisan in their duties as a presiding officer of a council meeting. The mayor or acting mayor shall relinquish the chair if he or she desires to enter into the debate of the merits of the pending question. The mayor or acting mayor shall not return until the pending main question has been disposed of by the council. So that would mean any amendments going back to that main motion. Once that is settled, then the person who is presiding, whether that would be the mayor or the acting mayor, then they would retake their seat. That was something that I think the committee was very much dedicated to changing in this ordinance. So let's see here. Going down to voting procedure, there was another in 218. We wanted to take away that the member's silence and failing to respond to a roll call vote would not be recorded as an affirmative vote. That really isn't Roberts. Although we don't follow Roberts exclusively in our ordinances, we have some exceptions to their rules in this ordinance. But in that case, the council wanted to strike that language, so that one was not housekeeping, that was a policy change. In addition, probably the bigger issue is 2-23, and that is a change from kind of how we do it now, if you will, that it takes, to something to be calendared for council consideration, it takes either the mayor or 2 council members to sponsor, if you will, the legislation. The city attorney's office does still review all documents, whether they're after they go through committee or from other departments, but a lot of departments begin to draft those resolutions or those ordinances online. In fact, there's even templates out there. But we wanted to make sure that the city attorney does have that final approval of those ordinances and resolutions that come before the council for consideration. So that was a bit of a difference in policy change. Otherwise, we do have the last sentence, all proposed ordinances may be assigned for or referred to a council committee for consideration or recommendation in subpart B. That is kind of what we do now. You can refer an ordinance now to one of your committees at first reading. Council's done it a number of times in the last year. Yes, ma'am.
My question it's to go back, so would you like to finish before I go back?
No, go ahead. We'll go back.
I guess I don't understand section 217, rules of debate. Would you explain to me, so the mayor, if he relinquishes his seat, then cannot come back into his position until we voted on it?
Correct. Until you've disposed of that matter in its entirety. That is
Why?
Roberts.
That's Roberts?
Yeah, that is, and that's what I thought we had wanted to follow, which is why we looked at that. Because I think you want to make sure because if they do show, and it's the mayor or acting mayor, show themselves to have I'm not sure how to say it, but just are partisan in terms of the debate of whatever pending question there is. You want to dispose of that entirely and then move on to the next pending question.
So then does the acting presiding officer get to vote?
They always get to vote.
Okay, and that's in charter, isn't it, or is that an
Well,
ordinance?
it's an ordinance.
Ordinance?
A little earlier in this section. They get to vote, but they still couldn't be debating from that presiding officer's seat
Okay.
as chair or vice chair.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions on that portion? Okay,
Good.
thank you. Let's see. I think that was the main changes in that section that we had just talked about, page 8. Otherwise, we simply wanted to clarify in subsection C of 2-23 that, again, that we wanted to keep that language the same about 2 members of the city council in terms of introducing or sponsoring legislation, so that it would be in tune with subsection A. It would be the same.
Okay, Deborah,
yes.
question on that.
Yes.
So right now, by ordinance, to bring any proposed ordinances, resolutions, or anything to the council, it takes 2 signatures of council members, or the mayor has to sponsor that, correct?
Correct. That is how it is done now.
Okay.
Any department needs to work through the mayor or the council to have those agenda items calendared. And so we try to there's another section too where we try to add those 2 council members as well to keep that consistent, that language consistent throughout this chapter. In addition to subsection E, we changed the number of hours that an ordinance with an emergency clause would be distributed to the council to 24. In in part because, of course, remember, we have to give at least 24 hours notice to the public if you're going to vote on something. And so we wanted to change that to 24, although if an ordinance is calendared in its proper form, you would have that by the Wednesday afternoon preceding your Monday meeting. So this would be probably in a extreme circumstance. So we wanted to make that consistent with state law with that 24-hour notice for the agenda. Let's see here. Otherwise, just some language cleanup in F in terms of consistencies. Nothing really has changed there. There was one I must have missed.
One other one here,
Yes,
Deborah,
yes.
too, I'd like you to explain to the community is H off of 2-23. Because that has been used, and I think people get a little confused to what's happening there.
In
And that
H?
is- yes, the affirmative vote of 5,
Yes.
and then talking about a city council member who passes.
Yes. A city council member may pass. Let me just read that section for those who are listening. An affirmative vote of at least 5 city council members shall be necessary to pass an ordinance. A resolution, motion, or any other proposition may be adopted by a majority of those present. When any vote is called, each city council member shall respond yes or no or pass. A city council member who responds pass shall be given an opportunity at the end of the roll call to change his or her vote to yes or no. The language that's being struck is, again, what we struck in a previous section, which says any past response not so changed shall be recorded as an affirmative vote. And we wanted to make sure that that your vote is recorded as a yes or no.
So you have to respond, sorry.
That is
It's-
correct.
So then I have another what if.
Go ahead, Sue.
So if the acting mayor, the mayor has spoken or debated, and the acting mayor then takes the vote or calls for the vote, and what if it's a tie?
Then it fails.
It fails. All
measure would
ties fail if
Yes.
they're, okay.
It would, the measure would fail. It would not have 5 votes to pass. Unless, of course, you had a smaller quorum. Maybe you had only 7 present for the meeting.
Councilman Brown?
I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but I've always disliked the pass rules. I think it's a wimpy way out. I didn't like it when I saw it in the legislature. Have the courage, stand up, say your vote when it's your turn. So if anyone would support me, I'd propose just getting rid of the pass option completely.
Question. Is that a Robert's Rules thing? Or is that something that is unique to this council?
I need to check on that before I can answer you with some certainty. I know it has been used sparingly, but it has been used with council in the last 6 years.
Because I agree with Councilor Brown. Because we take turns going first. It's hard to be the first one on a tough thing, but, bummer.
Well, as long as we have it written in that, if they can pass to get a little more time to think about it, they'll have a few more seconds, but they still have to vote.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're trying to do here, instead of having a no vote and it, no response, and then it being recorded as a no vote, which has happened before, in error also. So,
And Chairman Anderson, Jr., if I may, at one point in time, the council even had electronic voting. Sometime we hope to get back to that. But in that situation, obviously, you couldn't have the pass. You would have, the board would be open, if you will, for a length of time, and then the council would vote. So I don't know. It's up to the council on the prerogative of that, but we will look into that if you want us to
and with all respect to Councilman Brown, in something like this, could we agree to maybe leave this and discuss this as a full council?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
I am finished if you are done with
Okay.
questions.
Is there any other questions for Deborah?
I don't have any questions. I'd like to see us move this forward. This is another one we've been working on pretty hard for a while. I'd like to see us move it to full council.
First, I'd like to ask if there's any public opinion, or if the city attorney's office would like to make a statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, Dave Feifley with the City Attorney's Office. I want to commend this committee and also the clerk's office for their hard work in terms of making this revised procedures ordinance more in compliance with Robert's Rules of Order. I think we've come a long way. And I think the thing that I was certainly trying to impress upon the committee was that Roberts has been around since about 1876 or somewhere around there, and it's certainly gone through a lot of trial and error. But Councilor Aguilar, I think your comments are, in terms of what ifs, are certainly something that looms in all of our minds. I just have a couple of comments on just a few of the minor sections here. In terms of Section 2-9, Subpart A, it's allowing the acting mayor to vote on all issues. I think this is where maybe I have a comment and a question at the same time. Roberts doesn't really definitively answer it in the text itself. If we have a situation where the mayor participates in debate, has to recuse himself from being the chair, and he or she goes and allows the acting mayor to take over, can the acting mayor then vote on something? For when you can't find it in the text, you go to the frequently asked questions, the beauty of Google. The first, on robertsrules.com, it's the official Roberts Rules of Order website. It's only for those of us process geeks that would actually look at it. But under question 1, they talk about whether the president or presiding officer can vote. And it talks about the impartiality required of the presiding officer of an assembly precludes exercising the right to make motions or debate while presiding, and also requires refraining from voting except when the vote is by ballot or whenever his or her vote will affect the result. The way I would read that, I kind of question if we want to keep the acting mayor being able to vote. I think if we want impartiality from the chair of whatever meeting it is, I would respectfully submit maybe you want to keep that totally impartial.
Thanks, David. I appreciate that. I can tell you in practice what used to happen when Gary Hansen was mayor, and he would want to, and it happened very rarely, when he wanted to weigh in on an issue, he would pass the gavel over to the chair, and then he would make his comments and debate the issue, but when it came time to vote, he went back and then did not vote on the issue. From my perspective, that always seemed appropriate, and because I think that the council, by charter, is set up to vote on the issues, and the mayor is there to preside, but can, under that scenario, weigh in if he or she feels so inclined.
See, my concern is that I represent a constituency that right now, as chair of the council, then I would be the individual that the gavel would be passed to, and if I was not allowed to vote, I would not be voting for my constituents, and I do have a problem with that.
And follow up, that could be gamed against you. It could be gamed against any decision, which wouldn't be appropriate either, because it's very clear in charter that the mayor does not have a vote except in a tie, and that the council always votes.
I wish Roberts spelled it out better in the text. You think in 400 plus pages they could maybe answer that question, but it doesn't. And anyway, it's just a point of concern, certainly, and something to think about. And you folks have dealt with different, beyond just your council experience. You've been in several committees throughout the community, and I'm sure your collective wisdom will come up with something. But
if I may follow up on that, Roberts is not saying that the chair would get to, in this case, the mayor would get to vote once excused from that seat, correct?
No, and the charter, Councilor Brown clearly says that the mayor cannot vote except to break a tie. So no, that would not be an option, and certainly the charter would control over Robert's Rules of Order. So the other, under Section 2-9, just the other question I had was under Part D now, it used to be Part C, where the city clerk shall serve as the parliamentarian. I think in practice we've certainly been doing that. However, Robert's Rules does specifically state that the chair selects the parliamentarian and not the not, and you wouldn't do it by ordinance. The other question I had was near the end, under section 2-23. In parts A and B, it talks about, I guess the current version had ordinances prepared by the attorney's office, and now it would just be allowing others to prepare ordinances and having our office review. And then it talks about when what's been deleted in Part B is that items are reviewed by the mayor and authorized representative where there are substantive matters of administration involved. And where I see the current language, a more preferable version in my view, is that I think you have, with anything, the element of surprise in terms of things coming, being drafted by someone other than the attorney's office, things appearing on the agenda, and suddenly we're scrambling to determine the legality of something. I mean, our office reviews 2,300 items per year. There's only 6 attorneys, and I respectfully submit it would sure help our office if we have a little more advance notice. Once in a while, things get on the agenda, and I don't want to minimize your right as counselors to have 2 of you put something on the agenda. I would never want to do anything to jeopardize that, but it sure helps our office in terms of trying to assist you going forward to have a little more active role perhaps in the preparation part of it rather than it appearing on the agenda and Wednesday afternoon I'll get the email and suddenly we're scrambling and trying to get it to where by Monday we know the legality of it. And there are times when a legal answer just can't be done within a few days like that. And I do note that in terms of some other items that were deleted, just an historical perspective, the attorney's office used to be allowed to present items onto the agenda. And I have no heartache if you take that power away from us, because if the mayor and at least 2 counselors aren't in favor of something on the agenda, why would I do it? But sorry to be facetious about it, I didn't mean to be, but I know there were some Argus Leader articles when the charter was first adopted and the first council was going through this. There was some criticism in the Argus Leader. Well, why is the city attorney allowed to present ordinances? And again, I think we have sparingly used it over the years. I have not, in my 10 months have we done it, but I just, for historical perspective, I do note that that was taken out. But I guess my concerns would be, again, to keep a more active role for us. We're certainly nonpartisan. You're our clients. The administration is our client. The whole city is our client. If you want something drafted, we're willing to do it and help you through it. And I just would request to aid our office, to aid and help you, that we be more active and this be reworded to allow us to have a more active role in the drafting process. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Deborah?
Thank you, if I could. And I just really appreciate David Feifley's comments. You know, on that one section about drafting, we did have in there originally, although that part was, I think, removed as a suggestion from the office, but most of the time the council clears your resolutions and ordinances through committees. So you have a great vetting time. It's usually 2 to 3 months. And I actually was going to put that in the, or actually originally we had that in the ordinance, and then I pulled it out because I wondered if it tied your hands. In the bid district, for instance, that didn't go through a committee, but every other ordinance or resolution has generally, and those big policy issues, such as this one, such as contracts, all of those have input from the public. So I do think, and especially from the department heads. The flip side of that is something that you'll visit about at audit committee. When previous councils had, they wanted to bring some legislation forward, and and there was some of the departments, some of those department heads are gone now, but had said, no, we don't need that. And the whistleblower ordinance was one of those that was supposed to be going in tandem with the fraud hotline. And so that was part of the concern about taking that out. It wasn't that you wouldn't have the notice to the departments, because obviously those folks, we would really need to to vet the policy changes through. But that was why that was taken out, if you will. Certainly up to council, whatever you want to do with it, you want to put it back in. And again, the first revision did have that all of your ordinances would go through committee, because I thought that would also just safeguard and give assurances to the administration that would be a process of vetting that through public discussions. The other ones, I don't have there. I should say the other things about Roberts. There are times in these revisions, and we have an ordinance that's not here, so we're not revising that ordinance. But it says where we haven't changed Roberts in ordinance, then we revert back to Roberts. I can give you one instance with a motion to reconsider where we don't use Roberts because it really doesn't fit with our timeline for meetings. And so we have the motion to reconsider comes up at the next available meeting, not at our main one, not at the first Monday of the month. And so that is one instance where the ordinances need to not follow Roberts to accommodate our schedule. But everything else, really no comments on. Just look for the prerogative of the committee to move forward. Thank you.
Questions?
For Dave, City Attorney Fifley, clarify for me. I understand what you're saying to me about bringing your office back into the loop a little bit more. Have you considered wording? I'm not sure that I understand how different it would have to be. I'm not seeing in my own sort of wordsmithing. I can't see what changes we would make. Have you thought about that, or do you have ideas for me?
Off the top of my head, I don't, Councilor Erpenbach, but I'd be happy to present it to you in a very short time frame.
Okay. Yeah. That'd be something I'd want to consider. I want to just see that other side again.
Thank you.
Because I'm not sure that I disagree with what's been crossed out at this point, but I also am cognizant of what you're saying to us. So, yeah, if I can, that'd be great.
Okay. Any other questions from the other committee members? Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Do we have any public input? Okay, I don't see any. Do we have any motions on this?
I would move that we send this to the full council with the changes as they are, considering that we may end up amending in council, but we're at a point where we have worked this pretty hard, and I really like the way this looks. I like the way how consistent it is with Robert's rules. I like how it's very clear, the expectations for council members in meetings, and I just appreciate the amount of work that's gone into this. So my motion is to move it to the full council.
I'll second that.
One comment on this is that I would hope our city clerk's department would work with the city attorney to come up with some different wording on those two sections in question so we can consider those.
Just,
Okay.
if I may, Chair Anderson, I'd also appreciate some language that would eliminate the pass, because I may consider an amendment to that. So if you could draft that, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. All in favor of Councilwoman Erfenbach's motion? Say yes.
Yes.
All against? Okay, that passes 4-0. That will go to the City Council. Next, we have Administrative Appeals Ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Council and Committee. Paul Bangford, Assistant City Attorney. A month ago, we met on the revisions for the appeal ordinances, and there have been a few changes that we've made since then that can be seen in the yellow highlighted portion on the copy that's in front of you. Just to go through those in order, in Section 260, the first one is under subsection 4. That was added, the number of the citation being appealed, if applicable, and not all appeals deal with citations, but most do. And that was added just to help out internally in the city attorney's office to help identify what particular citation was being appealed and make sure that we could track that quicker. Under subsection 5, which is the bottom of page 1, top of page 2, the changes we made there were to address some concerns raised by Councilor Brown at the last hearing in May. I think that the concern expressed was that we want to err on the side of making these hearings open and try to limit the number of closed hearings that we'd have. So the way that the appeal ordinance is currently drafted, it just says when somebody appeals a decision, that they should express whether they want that to be open or closed. The section that we added to help make it clearer that we want open hearings as the preference is we added that all administrative appeal hearings are presumed to be open to the public. If either party requests a hearing that is closed to the public, the party requesting the closed hearing must present good cause to the hearing examiner, that the public interest in having an open hearing is outweighed by the privacy interest involved in a particular case, or that a closed hearing is legally required based upon the nature of the evidence to be presented at the administrative appeal hearing. I know that one of the things that came up at the last committee meeting was what kind of cases might you want to have closed hearings. And the two examples that Mr. Fifley and I thought of at that time were perhaps there was some proprietary information that would be involved that a business would not want out. And the other thing that Mr. Fifley brought up, which is probably the more likely scenario, one of the things we're dealing with is daycares. And you could have a situation where you're trying to close a daycare, or at least that is brought up in an administrative appeal hearing, and there could be testimony from children about things that were happening or things that were going on at a daycare. And under those circumstances, there may be a reason to close the appeal hearing, but we tried to strengthen that language to show that we should err on the side of leaving that open for members of the public. There's also some things some small changes that we made further in Section 2-60. We just changed it from financial ability to financial inability in reference to making the payment. Thought that was the more proper way to express that. Under Section 2-62, there's just two words that were added under subsection 5. And this is dealing with if someone needs an interpreter at the administrative appeal hearing, just that the party or witness who does not proficiently speak English should provide an interpreter. We added party there to make it clear that it wasn't just the witnesses. And then the final change is in Section 2-64. That change was actually based upon something that Ron Bell brought up to me in terms of the fact that, currently under Ordinance 15-6.5, I believe, and let me double check that. 15.5-6, there is a specific ordinance that would exempt payment of permit fees for planning and building services and public works and fire prevention division, and specifically sets forth Habitat for Humanity, Make-A-Wish, and some other organizations that we exempt those fees for. Right now, the council has set forth in Section 15.5-6 which fees for permits should be waived, and so we didn't feel that the administrative appeal hearing officer should be making those determinations. We wanted to leave those within the discretion of the city council. And so as a result of that, we've crossed out permit so that power isn't usurped from the city council itself. Those are the changes that we've made since we met a month ago. Does anyone have any questions or comments about those changes?
Councilman Brown.
I want to thank you for the language change. I think that's perfect. Nice job.
Okay, thank you.
I guess with the language, I do have a question. Does any other members have a question? Now, this is after someone gets a citation, correct?
Correct. Most of the time it's because of a citation. Correct.
Okay. So the first thing that should happen after they get a citation, don't they go to an administrative hearing?
The administrative appeal hearing is what they would go to, correct.
Okay, but they haven't been convicted of anything right yet, so why is it an appeal?
Right. Because the city official who has issued the citation, the $100 citation, $200 citation, or $300 citation, has said, you owe the city this money. There is written on the ticket itself that if you disagree with that decision, you have 10 days to appeal the decision. We start out with the notice of violation where no money is owed. It just says correct the problem. If the individual who is out there, whether that be a health inspector or a zoning inspector, then feels that has not been taken care of or corrected in the time frame given, and that can vary. Fire usually gives 30 days. Under the ordinance, health gives 14 days. But if that isn't corrected, then a citation will be issued. If somebody disagrees with that citation, then they have the 10, and if these changes are made, they'll have 15 days to appeal that decision.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Any motions?
I will move to send it to the full council with the changes that have been addressed.
Second, Aguilar.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All against? That passes 4-0 also. Thank you, City Attorney's Office. Now we have open discussion. Do we have any items that we'd like to discuss at this
Just a
time?
question, what else, do we have other things waiting on our agenda for the next meeting, or are we free?
I believe for the first time in a long time, we might be free.
No, there's always more out there. We have always more out there.
Okay. If there's no other questions, at this time, I'd like to adjourn this meeting.